Hey, board gamers, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with another episode of Gumbo Live. We're episode number 34. It's season 2. Gumbo Live is the #1 Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming. Chris, that's because we're still the only Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming. Our special guest tonight, Chris Wray of the Opinionated Gamers. He's back. Gumbo Live is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Check out some of those other fine members like Jake and Daniel Bach from the Draft Mechanic podcast. They do a fantastic job of combining their love of board games and of craft beer. So when you get a chance, check them out. Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table. Hit me up on social media tonight, Twitter at Board Game Gumbo, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Board Game Gumbo. We'll be looking for your comments and questions in the chat. And there's one checking in already. Another Chris, Christian Strain, the designer of Asking for Troubles. Hey, Chris, thanks for checking in, Christian. Our guest tonight, Chris Wray of the Opinionated Gamers. Man, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
For anybody that hasn't met you before, tell us about, of course, who Chris Wray is and what is the Opinionated Gamers. Give us the elevator pitch.
So I think it's probably at this point the oldest and one of the last of the written review sites. We publish a review pretty much every business day. There's 20 to 30 writers. Most of them have been in the hobby for decades. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm one of the new kids on the block still. So, it's fun. I also, in addition to writing for the Opinionated Gamers, I used to write for Counter Magazine, which had its last issue a few weeks ago. And then I am also part of the Capital City Cardboard Critics, which is a mouthful, which is part of the What Did You Play This Week, another mouthful, podcast with Brandon Kemp.
Sure.
So
I caught the first episode. Actually, I think I've listened. Y'all have had how many episodes now?
2 episodes.
Yeah, I haven't got the second episode in yet. It's downloaded, but I got to catch the first episode. I actually like it. Great. You guys did a good job of that podcast.
I think Brandon brought me on to be snarky. So
I like that. Hey, it's a live show, Chris, so we're going to have some questions tonight. And one of the guys that helps me out with the show each week, as you know, is Steve O'Rourke, the name father from the Dukes of Dice. He says, hello again, BJ and Chris.
Thrilled to be here.
Steve and I are going to be playing a little game with you later on, so I can't wait to do that. Chris, I can't remember when we talked last time whether you were going to Essen or you were sending friends to Essen. What's the connection to Essen this year?
So I had just gotten back, but I hadn't had the chance to play a lot of the games. So after Essen, I have 20 to 30 people over to my house or a space that I rent, depending on the year, and I bring back all the hot games from Essen, even if they look like something that I'm not going to like.
Oh,
and
wow.
I take two suitcases, pack them up to 70 pounds each, and bring back 140 pounds of games.
Okay,
and
I know you're not flying Ryanair there because there's no way you could fit those suitcases on Ryanair at all.
No. In fact, I always avoid European connections just because of that issue. So I learned the hard way the first year on the packing side. But I bring back those games, and everybody comes over, and we play them, and we rate them. And so I probably played 30 or 40 Essen games within 10 days of last time we talked. And then we've been playing them, for months now. And so we're finally getting to the point. March is where the Essen titles have sort of run out, and I'm sort of, in this multi-month lull where there's not very many new games, but I'm starting to hit back up some of the old classics.
So by this time, you've kind of shaken out the games that you think are going to catch the eye of the gamers here across the pond, right?
Yeah, and a lot of them have come out here since then. So one of the last ones that hasn't made it over here is Altiplano, but I think it's coming soon from Renegade. I really like Altiplano. But I think the rest of them have all gotten U.S. releases if they're going to. So one of the things about Essen is you find all these sort of odd and rare Japanese games and things, and a lot of those are one print run of 500 that you'll never see anywhere else. But yeah, a lot of the ones that are going to get a U.S. release, they've made it here in recent weeks. So. When
we last talked, I remember this now, we talked about a favorite publisher of both of ours, Oink Games, which is finally starting to make the convention circuit. I mean, coming to Gen Con, of course, they've been going to Essen as far as I know. But did they have a presence there? Did Oink have a new game we need to look for?
Yeah, so their new game was Modern Art, actually, which is a 25-year-old game. But
okay, so that's the Stamps game that we talked about.
Yeah,
but Modern Art version.
Yeah, so that was their hot Essen title. They were also still promoting Insider pretty heavily. Okay. I think Insider's been pretty popular, so that's been a good IP for them. And I think the Pyramids Deadline was pretty new at that point. I only played it once. It was pretty cool, but yeah.
I have not played that one. Steve's got a question for you, or comment. Big yes on Oink Games. He and I always talk about our love of those little small box Oink games. Speaking of small box games, a new company came out by a friend of mine, Nolan Nasser, artist that a lot of people know about, Deep Water Games. Sorry, and they make. He's publishing small box games from Emperor
S4. Yeah,
S4.
Yeah, they're one of my favorite publishers. I was really excited.
Taiwan, if I remember right.
Yeah. So they did their original version of Hanamakoji.
Correct.
Shadows over Kyoto. Yeah, they have really beautiful games. So and they're really clever too. So yeah, that's a good business model.
So those are games that you're familiar with. Those are games that you like.
Yeah, I love those. I always check those out when I'm at Essen. And you can import them strangely from France. So usually that's my path to get those is through Philibert over in France.
Okay. Well, I just heard from Nolan, Mystery of the Temples is going to be hitting Kickstarter, I think March 27. So if you've ever wanted a copy, if you don't already have one, I like it.
Yeah, I'd love to try it. Yeah. So that's a great business model. That's a great publishing partner too.
I've tried Hanamakoji and Mystery. I like Mystery of the Temples better because it plays more people. Hanamakoji, as I recall, is only 2 players.
Yeah.
Really cool puzzle, though.
It is. I always say if you like Lost Cities, Hanamakoji is the next step up. So it's one of those really cool 2-player card games.
Oh, and there's someone checking in here. A couple of people here. Oh, Mr. Sean Jones, musician extraordinaire, also a demo guy for Envoy, checking in, says, hey, I love those on games too. Just like Steve O'Rourke and Kirk Beezer. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Kirk Beezer.
Oh,
you know Kirk?
I don't think I have met Kirk.
Hey, Kirk, thanks for watching the show. And he says the Herbalism Kickstarter. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, I love that game. That was a amazing sort of deduction game. I'm a big fan of deduction games. I hope Brandon Kempf is watching. I know a good deduction game when I quickly beat Brandon. So.
That must be that's the test.
Yeah, that's the test. He beats me in every other game, but deduction ones I can usually best Brandon. So.
Well, I was impressed. They did a really good job of their Kickstarter. They kickstarted 3 or 4 games at the exact same time, with Herbalism being the focus, but you could buy these other games too. If I remember right, Herbalism was the main focus of the Kickstarter. So
yeah, I had bought a copy at Essen. Otherwise, I would have definitely backed that. It's a beautiful game too.
I don't know a lot about it though. How do you play the game? What is it?
So it's just deduction. So you'll have there's different cards and they have different colors basically, and you're trying to deduce what's out of the game. So it's a little bit like Code 777, the Saxon Classic, or if you've played Alchemist, that huge heavy deduction game. It's like that, but simple. You can play it in 20 minutes.
Nice. So getting that big box feel like typical Oink type games but they're in a small box.
Yeah, and it's one of those games like any deduction game where it's always a puzzle and it's always sort of this, tense little, do I try to solve it now even though I don't have it perfectly solved and take the gamble? I always take the gamble, and that's why I beat Brandon. So, but yeah, it's one of those sort of, do I, don't I type of games.
Christian's a graphic designer, and Christian Strain says, hey, Oink has some great graphic design on their boxes. That's one of the things that stands out, how they get these little tiny boxes, but the way the design doesn't look anything like our typical American or European boxes.
No, and one of the things is that minimalist design is actually really helpful to those of us that hoard games. Now, I have a strict collection limit, but if you've got 300 Ticket to Ride size boxes, that's several rooms of your house. Wow. But if you've got 300 sized Oink games, that's a corner. So.
Yeah, I was worried. I'm tempted Fireball Island, the new game coming out from Restoration Games, but I've seen a picture. Chris Kirkman posted a picture of what the old box used to look like. I mean, it was gigantic. But I'm hearing now that Restoration's saying because of the stacked parts of the game, the board is going to be an overlay, basically that just spreads out whenever you place the game out. They're going to get it into a box about the size of TI4. Now, that's still a big box.
Yeah, that's a big.
If all you did, what do they call it, the coffin box? If all you did was play coffin box games, you'd need a pretty big house to store all those games. Whereas if you had 100 Oink style or Emperor S4 games, you'd have no trouble at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So one of the things you and I want to talk about is some of the games that you did come back from Essen. Is there anything that Altiplano is one you talked about, but is there any other games that we should be looking for here on our shores that you particularly enjoyed from Essen?
So coming soon from Stronghold, if not already, I thought Noria was pretty cool. Now that one had a lot of hype at Essen, and then it's really fallen in the BGG rankings since then. I don't quite know why. It's clever. It's a little bit heavy for me. I'm not a big heavy gamer, but it's a clever game, and I've enjoyed playing it. I know I've had several people borrow it from me. So that's coming from Stronghold. I think Stronghold also recently, they're the publisher that seems to have had the most lag time out of Essen. Stronghold also recently got a Indian Summer released. And I really liked Indian Summer. That was, if you liked Cottage Garden or Patchwork, Indian Summer is a natural game for you. So
I love Cottage Garden. I like, in fact, in some ways, I like it a little better than Barren Park. Although I like the race element of Barren Park. I like the casualness of. I mean, to me at least, Cottage Garden feels a lot more relaxing than Barren Park. I'm always stressed when I'm playing Barren Park. I don't know why.
Yeah, and I think, and obviously this is most similar to Cottage Garden, but I thought the artwork in this version was more attractive. I really liked the theme, and I actually thought this was extremely clever because the tiles that you're placing, the polyominoes, have holes in them, and so you're trying to cover things on your board, and so it's a little bit of a puzzle within a puzzle because you're not only trying to get the pieces on the board, but you're trying to fit them in a certain way so you can see the forest floor.
Sean Jones reminds us that Noria is just coming out. In fact, I think, Sean, the street date is March 21st, but I'm not positive about that. So there was kind of a lull between, I think, it really being available on the shores. And sometimes the game will take a dive if nobody's playing it. So,
yeah, that's true. And also, one thing to always remember before you look at BGG ratings is, for whatever reason, and I don't mean to stereotype, the Germans rate games much lower than us Americans. So in the course of a game that comes out of Essen, the ratings will usually go up after the initial ratings because that's when the Americans start playing it, and then they'll slowly tail off. So Noria, I expect we'll see another spike in the ratings once it hits U.S. shores.
Well, I like the bag building element of Orleans, and I'm looking forward to Altiplano. The wheel building element of Noria really intrigues me. I think it's going to be a little bit more complicated for my usual taste, but I like to sample it.
Yeah, so my biggest complaint about Noria was the rule book, actually. I think it's actually it's a heavy euro, but I actually think it's way easier than I thought it would be. I actually tried reading the rule book, and I'm like, I don't understand this. And then I had Brandon Kempf read the rule book, and he explained it to me. I'm like, oh, this is easy. How did I miss this? But that rule book is a bear.
So a good game for someone else to teach us then.
Yeah, exactly. Like. Yeah, I'm a written reviewer, so I never say the following words. But yeah, you're gonna have to watch a video. So yeah,
wow.
Not you, but this is one of the few games where I'm like, yeah, just go watch a video before you read that rule book. So.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo here at Gumbo Live with my guest from the Opinionated Gamers, Chris Wray. Chris, I'm sorry to see Counter Magazine go. I've actually bought about 5 or 6, maybe even 7 or 8 issues of it when it went to PDF format. I would just throw it on my iPad, and if I was on a plane or at a hotel or something, I would read through the magazine. And I always enjoyed the magazine. Hate to see it going, but what I really wanted to talk to you is about the Spiel des Jahres news and the frontrunners. You have an excellent series of article about the history of the German awards, and so I always like to talk to you. And you and I trade emails sometimes about what's coming out. What do you think is the front-runner? So let's talk about the Spiel des Jahres. Is it a wide open race, or has the field narrowed in your opinion?
I think the field's narrowed quite a bit. Now, I'll bet.
Is there any hints with my design up here?
Yeah, I think you've got three winners up there. Yeah, a few months ago I told you when I was on the show the first time, I thought leaving Essen, I thought the 3 leaders were probably photosynthesis, Azul, and Majesty for the realm. I'm sticking with Majesty. I'm definitely sticking with Azul. I'll drop photosynthesis off there for a couple reasons, but yeah, I think that Azul is definitely the candidate to beat at this point.
All right, let's talk about Azul first then. So, Spiel des Jahres, what in your mind makes this a Spiel des Jahres front runner, and why do you think the jury is looking at it?
So, Spiel des Jahres, the jury releases criteria, but I'll tell you, having written the length of a book about why they pick certain games, I think it really comes down to three categories. One, it has to be a beautiful and exceptionally well-produced game. And you've got a picture up, and you'll see this is a beautiful and well-produced game. It reminds me a lot of Starbursts, so maybe that's why I love it so much. That beautiful candy factor. But no, it's just exceptionally well made, and so that has that going for it. It has to be family weight. There was a time when the Spiel des Jahres would award heavy games, from like 1996 to 2000, when they gave the award to games like El Grande and Torres and Tikal. But that is over. I mean, the recent years have been the Colt Expresses, the King Domino, the code names. And so it has to be family weight. And then the third one, and people always underweight this, and I think this is what really messes people up when it comes to guessing the Spiel des Jahres, they reward originality. In fact, my theory is that they reward originality more than anything else, because they like games that are innovative, and they like games that if you bought the entire Spiel des Jahres series, you would have a good collection of games. Okay. So because Codenames is a word game, it's hard for a game like Decrypto, which I think is a great game, it's hard for Decrypto to win, because they're not going to pick another word game. Because if you just looked at all 38 or 39 winners, then you would have a pretty good and diverse set of games. And so that originality factor really pops. And Azul has all those things going for it. And I don't know that there's another game except maybe The Mind that has all three of those categories.
All right, so let's get, we'll skip to that one. And this is not a picture I took. The rest of these are all my pictures, are the manufacturer's pictures. This is one that I found from Eric Martin when he did the announcement for it. The Mind. Let's skip down on the show list there. Tell us about The Mind. To me, just looking at the pictures and reading the descriptions, it sounds sort of like called The Game, if I remember right?
The Game, yeah. It's the same publisher, not the same designer, but it is the same publisher. The artwork looks pretty similar, and NSV, the publisher, would probably kill me for saying this, but you could probably play this with a copy of The Game. So any deck of cards that goes from 1 to 100, you could play this with. So The Mind is a game. I'm about to describe this to you, and then I have to say something that I'll say I didn't think it would work, but it works like a magic trick, and it's sort of miraculous that this works. So you have 100. You have 100 cards, and you're going to play over 8 to 12 rounds. 8 rounds if you're 4 players, 12 rounds if you're 2 players, 10 rounds if you're 3 players. So you take, in the first round, everybody gets 1 card, and these cards go from 1 to 100. Your goal is, and you can go in any order, there are no turns. Your goal is to simply, say start, and then play those 3 cards down in order. So one player plays, a 20, next person plays a 35, the last person plays a 54. Then and if you make it, great. If you don't, you lose a life, and you get so many lives in the game. And then in round 2, you each have 2 cards, and in round 3, you each have 3 cards, and in round 4, you each have 4 cards. And so you're just trying to get the cards out on the table. Now, how this actually works is it's kind of a timing game. Because if I played the 16 and you've got the 18, you need to play that pretty quickly. But if you've got the 35, you need to hold off. Eric Martin described, I learned about the game from Eric Martin, and I immediately bought a copy. Eric Martin said, this game feels like you're inadvertently participating in a magic trick. And it is actually, that is the feeling of playing this game, because it actually, you just sitting around a table with people, and I played it with people who I didn't know that well, you just naturally sort of sync up. It's like 16, 18, 22, 27, and then all of a sudden this awkward silence comes about, and everybody's like, oh God, it's been several seconds. And then it's like 40, and then somebody shows, I had the 39, so we had an error. But yeah, it's really cool. And it leads to some tense and awkward and funny moments where people are just laughing out loud. The first game I played, one guy had the 98, and the other guy had 100. And the guy with the 100 says, I'm going to get up and go to the restroom, and when I come back, I need you to have played your card. Now, that's cheating. You're not allowed to talk about your cards, but, when you've got the 100, you're last. So
you're last.
But yeah, it's really clever. Here's the thing. People will probably write this off and be like, how can this win the award? But it's really original. It's pretty well produced, and card games can win. Hanabi won. And then the other thing is the game itself got a nomination a couple years ago. And if the game can get a nomination, so can The Mind. And plus, the jury loves this game. So I follow all of the SDJ jury blogs, and they love The Mind. So I think this is a pretty good bet.
It does remind me a little bit about the game. Sean Jones said the same thing. He actually taught me the game at Gen Con 50 last year. We got close. We almost won, but I'd like another bite of that. But this one, for whatever reason, sounds a little bit more intriguing than the game.
Yeah, I think this is more original. And here's the thing. I love it when a game comes out and I play it and I'm like, how did somebody not invent this before? And right. I mean, as a designer, that's an enormous credit when it's so simple that everybody thinks, oh, this had to have existed before, but this one didn't. And, the SDJ jury rewards that. So I think that sort of timing sense makes this more, I think it makes it better than the mind. I've played it a dozen or more times. Yeah, sorry, than the game. I've played it a dozen or more times. Eric Martin and I have been corresponding back and forth about this. I think he's well more than 30 plays so far. So the people who are trying this kind of get a little bit obsessed with it.
Steve O'Rourke says, almost sounds like an inverted six nymph, and we know that's a classic game that everybody should have in their collection.
Yeah,
right?
and I think you could play this with the six nymph deck too. I put a review up on Board Game Geek, a written review. It has all the English rules, and so any deck that goes from 1 to 100, you just need 8 tokens to put in piles, and then you'll have the components needed to play this.
Just for research purposes before you decide whether you want to play the game.
Yeah, exactly. I will tell NSV 2 things. One, they should get this to the U.S. soon. And then also, between the mind and the game, they need to start naming their products in a way that I can find them in the BGG database.
Yeah. Trying to find the mind, and there was Mind and a bunch of other type of games when I was trying to find a picture. I didn't realize how many games there had that had such a close name to it.
And I think this is also already on its second printing. So it came out 3 weeks ago and immediately sold out. And then, Brandon Kempf went to order a copy and he couldn't find a copy. So I think it's already been reprinted by NSV. Now, I think they produce their own stuff in Germany so they can reprint quickly. But, that's a good sign.
Chris Strain says, hey, the game itself is the hardest thing to Google when because if you just put the game, board game, you're going to get a billion different ones. That's a good point, Chris Train. Hey, so BJ from Board Game Gumbo on Gumbo Live. I got Chris Wray from the Opinionated Gamers. I want to get to that second game we have on our list because this is the one that is most intriguing of all the ones I haven't played, and that is Majesty for the Realm. I know it's not a great picture, but I was trying to get a picture of everything. Hopefully I have the right game there. Yeah, that's Majesty. So Majesty for the Realm. Why is that an appealing game to the SDJ jury?
So I always say never rule out Hans and Gluck, which is the publisher of Carcassonne. So never rule them out. They streamline their games. They play test the crap out of them. So let me make my pitch for Majesty for the Realm, because I think the first two I'm pretty certain about. This one is probably the one in my mind that's on the bubble. And this is probably the one, at least among my friends at the Opinionated Gamers, that I got the most flack for saying that this had a chance of a nomination. Here's my thought. First of all, the jury loves it. Second of all, it's beautiful. Third of all, it's original. But here's, in my mind, the moment where I felt like this could win. I was a playtester for this a year ago, so full disclosure on that. But when I finally got to try it at Essen, it's changed quite a bit since playtesting. But I actually played it against a 10-year-old German kid and his dad. And, this is it feels a little heavy. And I sit down with this 10-year-old, and maybe he was a really smart 10-year-old, but he picked up this game and he just whooped me and his dad. And then he went on and he played in the tournament, and there were a couple of other kids in the tournament there too. And so this is a family weight game, and I just saw how much everybody there loved it. And then at my post-Essen little gaming event, Majesty and Azul were the 2 highest rated games. And a lot of my friends have just sort of burned through this. I also think there's a little bit of the jury. I don't know that they do this, but I always feel like they do. They reward accomplished designers. And a lot of people think that Marc-Andre, the designer of Splendor, was robbed a couple of years ago.
2014, yeah.
Yeah, so this is maybe the second coming of Marc-Andre with another nomination. So that's my case for Majesty for the Realm.
I don't remember who won in 2014 over Splendor, but that's still shocking to me that he didn't win with that game.
It was Camel Up, and that was one of those. Every year, there's a thread on Board Game Geek about how much people hate the Spiel des Jahres, and every year, I predict that this thread is coming. It'll come this year too. But that year was a really nasty one.
Yeah, I remember.
So because people love.
You know what's funny though? Camel Up is still being bought today, still being played. I see new gamers playing it all the time. Both games, it almost should have been the year where both games won because for different reasons, both games are an STJ perfect game.
Yeah, and I always felt like the moment I realized that Camel Up maybe deserved, because I was a huge Splinter fan. I'm not very good at most games. I'm one of those gamers that you play with that loses all the time. But I got pretty good at Splinter, and I actually got second in the Gen Con Championship. So I love Splinter. I'm not meaning to mean Splinter, but I knew Splinter was in dire straits when I played it with my parents, and they just couldn't understand it. And I played Camel Up with my parents, and they're like, "This is the best thing ever." So.
It is, out of all the games I own, it is one of the very first games. If I have a couples night where people who have never played games before, if I'm not going to play just a regular mass market type game, Camel Up is going to come out because it's one of the ones that I can teach easily. And yet when they figured out all the different rules and they play it and they enjoy it, I know they can play just about anything in my collection. Camel Up is great. Plus, it's got just enough randomness that anybody can win. Even even the newest newbie can win.
Yeah, as long as you always bet on Orange Camel. I don't know why, but Orange wins a disproportionate number of our games.
Orange Camel.
The Orange Camel?
Steve, yeah, it's not a bad idea. Steve O'Rourke says, hey, are you putting any money down in the Spiel futures market? Sounds like you have this handicap pretty well. I'll tell you what, he's had a lot of months now, Steve. He's had a lot of months of playing and a lot of reading. It's a lot of research that's going into these picks. I can feel. So
I'm going to, so fair disclosure on a couple things here. Every single year, for the last several years, I've hosted a contest on Board Game Geek. And I give out either a cash or a game or Geek Gold. I give some prize every year to whoever can correctly do the best job of guessing the nominees and winners. And so I always launch it in early April, and then people have basically a month to put in their entries. You can put down 3 SDJ nominees, 3 KDJ nominees. You get 1 point for each correct nominee, and then if you listed the eventual winner, you get 3 extra points. So I've hosted this contest for years. I've won it myself, but it's which is kind of cheating because I hosted the contest, I guess. Yeah. but I put my stuff out there just like everybody else, and I also put a thing up on the Opinionated Gamers every year where we try to guess the award winners in advance. So I do research this, but the other thing is I follow the jury pretty closely in social media. So it's actually not real rocket science to guess the nominees because you could just go over to Udo Barsch's blog. His blog is Udo Barsch Review for Millions, and it's in German, but Google Translate's helpful. Sure. And he lists every month the games he enjoyed. And every year, all of the SDJ nominees came from that list of like 20 games. So there's one guy who you could just go out and get a pretty good sense. So if Udo Barsch didn't like Mystic Vale, it's probably not going to make the list. So, and I don't know why I picked that as an example. But
do you have ties? I mean, is it pretty close in your contest?
Usually there's usually a tie every year because a lot of people list the same games, but it's broken by the first person to list those nominees. So yeah, so
first person to get out there.
Yeah, and I reward that because every year in the SDJ, I feel like, not every year, of course, but I feel like most years, there's always this one nominee that nobody's ever heard of that suddenly gets it. So I remember the year that Broom Service was nominated for the Kenner Spiel and won. Everybody's like, what is Broom Service? And Eric Martin was like, I think Eric Martin said it wasn't in the BGG database. And then last year, I had heard of Wetloff Knock Eldorado or Race to Eldorado, but I had never played it because it was a deck builder only available in German. I had seen it on Udo Barsch's blog, so I should have known. But last year nobody guessed that one in the contest because who knew? So.
And when are the announcements done? They must be before Dice Tower Con, which is July 4th, because I played all 3 of the nominees at Dice Tower Con.
So it shifts a week or 2 each year, but it's usually mid-May.
Oh, okay, yeah. So they had brought them all, and they had them set up on tables, and we got to play. We got to play all 3 of them. Actually, I played King. I already owned a copy of King Domino, but the other 2 I got to play while I was out there. So that is it. All right, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, Gumbo Live with Chris Wray from the Opinionated Gamers. We're talking Spiel des Jahres games. I had Steve Bonacore recently, who is putting out Memoir. Hopefully, I'm saying it right. And that's the next game I want you to talk about. Tell us
So
about Memoir. Why do you have that one on the list?
So Memoir is a memory game, but it's probably the coolest memory game I've ever played. I'm not a big fan of memory games, actually.
Neither am I.
But this one's pretty cool. It's pretty simple to play. It's very well made. It's very beautiful. Sorry. And it's pretty original. So Memoir, you just have this 5x5 grid. You touch a card. It has a color or an animal. And then you have to touch either the color or animal on a different card. Now, you have some information. You get to see a few cards in advance. It's tense. My family absolutely loves it, which is a good sign of a Spiel des Jahres winner. It has a couple of other things going for it besides that. First of all, the jury seems to like it. And then also, Memoir is one that is published by Edition Spielweise. I think that's how you say that. And they had a good year at Essen. So they published not only this, they published Noria, which got a lot of positive press, and then they published Indian Summer.
Right.
But those were their 3 Essen games.
So you're thinking a little reward for a strong year?
Yeah.
Pick the one closest to the weight of the Spiel des Jahres?
Yeah, so I had sort of briefly mentioned this one to the Opinionated Gamers as a possible nominee. And one of the guys who I really respect that writes for the site on occasion, he's a past Kinderspiel des Jahres winner. He wrote and said, this feels like it could be a Kinderspiel des Jahres. So the kids get an award. And so I think, Memoir, I think, would be a really strong contender, but I think that's probably a fair point. This probably is more in Kinderspiel des Jahres territory because it is so easy. But if, it's one of those that's on the bubble, it could pop into either award.
And then let's get down to Seabiscuit, the one that just seemed to do well right out the gate, and then is struggling to finish in that last furlong, trying to bring it home. And that's photosynthesis. Why is photosynthesis fading at the finish?
I think because it's too heavy, actually. So,
okay.
I liked photosynthesis a lot, but I like abstract games. Now, it's nominally not an abstract game. It's actually
arguable.
Yeah. So it feels abstract because that perfect information type of thing. But I think the biggest problem with it is actually a kind of a here. Actually, so I'm going to back up and quote somebody. Mark Johnson, the podcaster, he hosts Board Games to Go, which is I think the first board game podcast. He actually once said that the Spiel des Jahres winners are all marked by the fact that you can play them casually and you can play them cutthroat. I think photosynthesis has a little bit of that going on, but I think this is a little bit more on the cutthroat side. And so that might be the undoing of photosynthesis.
Here's why I think photosynthesis failed, at least in my mind. I've played it, I don't even know how many times now, 6 or 7, I guess, maybe more. And the opening part of the game is really slow. Mm-hmm. And the last part of the game, if you're not careful, can be completely anticlimactic. I mean, if you don't set up your points correctly, you can have a turn or two where you're really not doing anything at all. And of course, people shouldn't criticize the game for that. That's how the game is played. And so you should be prepared to have enough points to do what you want on that last round. But it just seems inevitable. At least 1 or 2 people have nothing to do for their last turn or two, and it turns people off. And I'm wondering if photosynthesis is a game that when I first saw it, I mean, it's beautiful on the table. It seems relatively easy to learn. It's not super complicated, although it's got a lot of depth, but it's got a lot of take that. I said, man, if you remember right on the show, I predicted it would be the win.
And I get it's a great game. Another complaint I have about it is it feels a little bit long. Now, I think as gamers, a lot of our attention spans are getting a little bit shorter, and they're certainly getting shorter for the Spiel des Jahres jury. Yes. I mean, Codenames and King Domino were 20, 25-minute games. So, but this feels a little bit long. And the thing is, you can play, I think, in either 3 or 4 rounds, right? And 3 rounds never feels like enough, but 4 rounds always feels like too many.
It's 3.5. It's exactly right. 4 is too many, and 3 is not enough. Now, Christian Strain has a good point. Photosynthesis isn't an abstract game because abstract means not representing a real thing, and photosynthesis clearly represents the growth of trees both artistically and mechanically. He's right about that, but it's still at its base. It's got abstract mechanics, I guess, is what everybody sees. It's almost like a faux abstract game.
Yeah, so this was actually an argument once between me and Eric Martin because I described photosynthesis as not being an abstract, and he said to a good portion of the hobby, abstract means it is perfect information, and I had never considered that. I still don't buy it. So yeah, I guess I agree with you. There is a thing here.
To Europeans, perfect information equals abstract. Chess, whether it's themed or not, is an abstract game because everything you know about the moves are all on the table. There's nothing hidden.
I had never thought about that. Yeah, actually, chess does nominally have a theme. So
it absolutely has a theme, but it's an abstract game.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's. I mean, the photosynthesis. The other thing I think that has going against it a little bit, and I think I may have mentioned this when I was on the show, they tend to reward publishers for their accomplishments. And Blue Orange won last year, so they produced King Domino. So the jury does not have it as a criteria that you can't win twice in a row, and it has happened before, back in the day when there weren't very many publishers. But these days, I think that would be the jury. Basically, the SDJ for a lot of German publishers keeps them in business, and so by spreading out the love a little bit, I think the jury might help keep the publishers afloat. Now, that's just a conspiracy theory in my mind, perhaps. But there are some publishers who all of a sudden find themselves in desperate financial straits and then suddenly win the SDJ. So, it just happens. So,
photosynthesis is bringing out all kind of opinions here. Chris says it's not an abstract game. It means not representing. Oh, I already did that one. Sorry. I meant to do this one. Chris, chess is an abstract in mechanics, but not in art. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Marshall Wells, my buddy from Alex, says one play of photosynthesis for me, and I had 4 turns where I could do nothing. Hard to want to play again when you can get shut out so badly, but it's still better than phase 10, he says. That is true.
Yeah, I actually find the fact that somebody can just sort of hoard the middle of the board frustrating. But
that is a good point. That is a good point. Jeremy says, anytime I feel eliminated in any kind of game, it leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth. And, photosynthesis has that. And I think that's the problem that I've had with people that I've played it with. There's always been a couple of people that are like, don't need to play it again. That last round was just boring. I think it's like you said, the game is a 3.5 turns game. And I think it's just turning people off.
Yeah.
Steve Finn, Dr. Steve Finn from Dr. Finn's Game says, I'm not too keen on the game because of the limited amount of action points. Man, it takes a while to build up that engine, Doc, but let me tell you what, I've got a couple of players in our home group that are getting to 20 points pretty easily in that second round. So I think it's just the way that you play. Some people are better at efficiency games than others. I'm not one of those, unfortunately.
Steve Finn Biblio should have been an SDJ winner at some point.
There it is. Dr. Steve Finn, Biblios, that's right. Steve O'Rourke says, leaves me, pun intended? Yeah, leaves me. Got it. Got it, Steve. Very nicely done. And he is right. Chris Strain is right. The mechanics of photosynthesis are thematic. You're planting seeds, you're growing the trees, you're cutting them down. It is thematic from that sense. I think the problem is that it looks great on the table. It has a great table presence, but in the end, it's kind of boring. I hate to say it.
Yeah, I found it really fun for 3 or 4 plays, and then after play 5, I was like, I'm probably never going to play this again.
And I think that's the death knell for any game that wants to be an SDG winner.
Yeah, because the jurors have said that they play a game 60 or 70 times. So
yeah. Can you see these guys playing photosynthesis 60 or 70 times? It's not going to make the cut.
If they played it 4 rounds, is there that much time in the month of June? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we had a big list, and there was one more I want to cover. I don't have a picture of it, though, and I apologize. I thought I had loaded it, but I didn't. And it's Dragon Castle. That's one that almost no one here in America has really gotten their hands on, but everybody that has played it has really talked highly of it.
Yeah, it's sort of a play on Mahjong, I think. It's or Mahjong tiles, I should say, the games. It's actually pretty cool. So it's very well produced. It's pretty original. It's by the same guy who did photosynthesis, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, actually it is. It's the same designer.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's having a good year. The question I have about that one is, did it get German distribution? So at Essen, I think they were only selling it in English. So if it did, it certainly fits that mold. I mean, original, beautiful, gameplay's clever, family weight. But I just don't know if they got enough German distribution to be eligible for the award. But that's one that I could see getting a nomination. If not this year, then when it does get that German publishing contract.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo live here. Want to play a little game with Chris Wray, the Opinionated Gamers. Chris, Steve O'Rourke and I have been talking for the last couple of days about Euros and whether they're thematic or not. So Christian Strain, your points may come into here. And what Steve O'Rourke and I want to do is throw some games at you and see which one of these games do you think is the more thematic. So what we're looking for, you always get that dichotomy between the Ameritrash gamers and the Euro gamers, and you've got people saying, "Oh, I don't want to play a Euro game because they're just dry cube pushing." And we want to show you, and you already know this, that there are some games out there that don't really feel like just dry cube pushing. They really do feel like you're doing that activity, sort of a Eurotrash type of game. It's not a hybrid like a Blood Rage. I'm talking about strict Euros, but that you actually feel the thematics coming through on there. You game?
Yeah, I love it.
And also, anybody out there, Marshall, Chris Train, everybody, if you guys have nominations, throw them out there. But I'm going to go with my first pick between me and Steve. My first pick is one, and I don't think it needs an explanation. It's from your hometown, Viticulture, from Jamie Stegmaier. It's a Euro. It's got all the classic Euro mechanics and stylistics. But to me, I've always been able to teach this game from a thematic standpoint. I don't actually teach it from a mechanic standpoint. I look at the triangle in the middle of the board, and I tell people, if you want to enjoy this game and if you want to try to win, look at this triangle here and think in terms of how wine is grown. You're going to plant fields. You're going to harvest the grapes. You're going to crush the grapes, and you're going to sell you're going to make wine, and you're going to sell it. You're going to follow this little triangle right here in the middle of the board. And you can see people's, the light bulbs going off in people's heads as they see, oh, now I can kind of see how the board is laid out. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's pretty thematic. Viticulture is one of those worker placement games where the theme comes through pretty well. So, yeah, that's certainly an extremely thematic game.
All right, Steve, I'm bringing it hard there. What's your first choice, Steve? Lay it on us. Steve says, I am prepared to go down in flames on this one. Marshall's got a choice for the SDJ. I don't think it's going to win, though. The Tiny Hands Challenge.
I'm not familiar with that one.
I don't know that one either, Marshall. I'm not sure on what that one is. And Chris Train says maybe it's the whole theme of photosynthesis. Growing trees is just plain boring. So maybe that's what's going on with photosynthesis. I'm not sure. So we'll get Steve's choices in a minute. Do you think that in the SDJ weight games, are they looking at theme at all for unusual type things, or is it more an unusual mechanic when you said people are looking for it?
I think mechanic. I mean, the theme on most SDJ winners is either non-existent or nominal in recent years. So, Codenames, nominal theme. King Domino, kind of a nominal theme. Colt Express was pretty thematic. I think that was unusual in that it was one of the really thematic SDJ winners. But some of them, Hanabi, pretty nominal theme. And then some of them are completely abstract. So you had Quirkle, for instance, that won, and it has no theme whatsoever. So, with the exception of Colt Express, I don't know that there have been that many recent thematic winners.
Well, Steve O'Rourke's first choice is, and you're going to see which one came out ahead, Champions of Midgard as his number one. Now, he debated whether it's a true Euro or not, but what do you think? Can you slide Champions of Midgard in there as a thematic Euro?
I haven't played it, so
I may win by default there on that one, Steve. He hasn't played Champions of Midgard. You've played Lords of Waterdeep?
Yes, I have.
Okay, not exactly the same game, but kind of similar in that your actions are creating more spaces on the board so that you can take more actions.
Okay.
Sort of similar feel. It's not the same game, but sort of a similar feel.
Yeah, I think it's so. I've never played it, so I'm not fair. But it's hard to beat Viticulture because, that is a game where it's all about aging the wine, which is, my understanding of real wine. Now I drink it before I can age it, but the only thing that bothers me about Viticulture is, do people actually age their grapes? I don't know. Is that
in
a
real
thing?
life or in the game?
In the game they do, but in real life, do people age grapes?
No, not that I know of. The wine obviously ages, but I can't think of them aging the grapes. I guess the only thing is that you stay with the same vines each year. So I guess maybe you could argue that's kind of thematic there. Jesse Dugas says, dude, even I like viticulture. And that guy, Jesse, is an Ameritrash gamer all the way, but he likes viticulture. So Jeremy says, well, that's not very fair, Jeremy. He says Steven wins on that one. Steve's arguments are in a game like Champions of Midgard or Lords of Waterdeep, which you've played, you're placing workers, you're growing the game. So it's got Euro, but it brings out the big heavy theme.
Yeah.
Sean wants to throw out one different, and he says, let's not forget about terraforming Mars. That's not on either one of our lists, and that's why I'm bringing it up. That's not a bad choice there for thematic Euro. I should have thought of that one.
Yeah, that's a theme that really comes through nicely in that game.
Steve O'Rourke says, no, the grapes mature on the vine, and old growth vines have serious merit. So that's probably where Jamie was going at. I'm looking for his second choice, and I think I have it here. All right. So, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. Your second choice, and I'm going to let him go first this time. His second choice was Stone Age, old school game. Of course, as his little joke. It's old school. It's the Paleolithic school. What do you think, Stone Age and I'll let Steve, if he wants to make some comments too. What do you think of that as a thematic Euro? I'm questioning that one. I'm calling shenanigans on that one.
Yeah, it's not as thematic as, viticulture or like an Agricola type, but I mean, you are gathering resources, I guess, which you would have done during the Stone Age. So,
well, he did mention that there is a certain spot on the board where two people go in and three people come out.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's a very valid point. So,
all right, let me give you my choice though, and see what you think, because I'm calling shenanigans. I don't know about Stone Age as a thematic Euro. Yeah, I'm going to get to your comment, Chris, in just a second. But what about New Bedford? Have you played New Bedford?
Yeah, this is one
of my top 3 games of all time. It's a absolute Euro game about the town of New Bedford up in the Northeast, and the whaling culture that developed in New Bedford, and it simulates building out the town as it was built from the whaling industry, but it also simulates going out on your ship and bringing in the whales, and the sea has less and less whales as the game goes on, which the designer of the game, put that mechanic in to simulate how the industry itself slowed down as they whaled out the seas.
Yeah, those are both. Gosh, that's a tough choice. Actually, I will give Stone Age more credit than I think you're giving it. I go New Bedford. The theme really comes through.
All right, you got to make a decision.
Yeah,
are you going with the reproductive purposes, or are you going with the whales?
I work in government, so I'm gonna have to go with the whales. There
it is. Going with the whales. Chris Strain says, I know a game that's a thematic Euro. Yes. And Chris Strain is the designer of Asking for Troubles, which, by the way, Strain, if you haven't listened to the Dice Tower today, take a listen. Tom Vassell has it on his top 10 list, so you might want to check that out. Nice little shout out for Christian Strain today by Tom Vassell. All right, so my third choice is a game you and I talked about before the show started. I've only played it a couple times, and I've only got one full playthrough, but I'm so impressed with the theme, and it's an absolute Euro game. Lisboa by Vital Lacerda. Have you played Lisboa? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, it's been a while, but yes.
All right, so it takes the history of this terrible disaster that Lisbon suffered, where in the 1700s, where there was an earthquake, which caused a tsunami, which caused fires throughout the city, and it leveled the city. The king comes and says, we need a plan. They come up with 4 different plans, and one of those plans was rebuilding the entire city from the ground up, from the rubble, and creating a new master plan city. Sort of like all these TNDs that are the traditional neighborhood developments that are spreading out all over the United States. They were going to do that in Lisbon. And the every mechanic in the game actually drives right back to the actual history in the game, even down to the cards. Some of the card play that you have reflects the historical event that took place. So I was super impressed with the fact that Vital Lacerda was able to make a very heavy, thinky game yet overlay all of this theme and history in it. So, what do you think, Lisboa?
Yeah, that's pretty successfully thematic. But
right.
In fair disclosure on all these things, I'm also an abstract gamer, so I tend to give things credit for theme when they probably don't deserve it. That's not a comment on Lisboa, but yeah.
Well, I've got Steve O'Rourke's choice here that he sent to me, and his last choice is a game I actually haven't played. I know the game, but I haven't played it, so I'm gonna have to trust you on this one. Thebes.
The Josh Jensen Was Theben? Is that the? Are you talking about the old Queen game?
The old Queen game, I think, is Thebes, right?
Oh God, that game had no theme that came through.
I wonder if Steve. We'll have to.
Oh no! You're right, because this is the one where you put the pieces in the bag and you actually draw them out, and it's actually sort of like you're hunting. Oh yeah, that is clever.
Thebes, digging for archaeological finds and coming up with more and more sand as the sites are emptied.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking about the part about moving to the map, but yeah, you're right. The bag part, yeah, that is actually a cool. That is a cool mechanic. So yeah,
I like his comment. New Bedford's whaling mechanic was lifted from my third choice, Thebes, which is true. I think it does pay homage to Thebes. And he says there's New Bedford, my choice, and older Bedford, which is Thebes.
Yeah, no, that's
a good
true.
one, Steve.
Yeah, so. Gosh, that's a game I haven't played in years, but yeah, that's a pretty good thematic choice. Actually, I would have to give that one probably credit here.
Well, hold on, let's do this here. So, if there's any other nominations out, we got Asking for Troubles from Christian Strain. We've got Sean Jones nominating Terraforming Mars. We got Steve O'Rourke nominating Thebes, and of course, I went with Lisboa by Vital Lacerda. Unless anybody else has any comments.
No lovers of Agricola.
No one's mentioned Agricola yet. No one's mentioned Agricola yet. Too bad Brandon's not here. If he was here, he'd probably throw some names out at you, some games out at you. But out of all those choices, or maybe you have a better one. Do you have a better one? Defend yourself. Is Agricola better than all of those when it comes to a thematic Euro?
Yeah, because in Agricola you can explain almost every rule in the context of actual farming.
Give me an example.
So you have to feed your people. So your workers aren't free. So you have to feed them. So that's the rule that everybody hates, of course. But your sheep, if you have two of them, they breed. If your cows have two of them, they breed. You want a well-developed farm. You can't just eat corn or grain or meat. You want sort of a well-diversified mix. You can't keep your animals in the same pens together. Some houses are more energy efficient. If you play with farmers in the north, some houses are more energy efficient than others. I think there's a good theme there, but I also really love Agricola. So,
Christian says dwarves and donkeys over Agricola, though, right?
Yeah. So the fantasy themes tend to be lost on me. I never really understood I get why people love Caverna, but I've never really understood the theme of Caverna. But I grew up on a farm, so I understand the theme of Agricola pretty well. But I'd have to go with of all those, the winner I think is probably Terraforming Mars. That's a game where the mechanics are really cool in that everything you're doing is sort of focused on terraforming a planet. So, and the game ends when the planet's terraformed, which is a cool ending to a game.
So out of all the games picked tonight, you would say Sean Jones with Terraforming Mars?
Yeah, I'd give that one the most credit.
Well, Sean, you are the big winner tonight, man. We'll give you that one.
And I once wrote a review of Terraforming Mars, and I don't even think I commented on the theme because I don't think that had ever struck me before tonight how thematic that one is.
There is a lot of theme in it. That's one, man. It's sitting on my shelf. I need to break it out again and get it played. I don't have any of the expansions for it, and I think that would be a good reason to get it back out there. Have you played any of the expansions yet?
Yeah, I've played both of the new maps and the Venus expansion. The Venus expansion is really only good if you want to play a game solo, at least in my opinion. It's a fantastic expansion, don't mishear me, but that's a solo expansion in my mind. And then the two new maps are both awesome.
Marshall Wells threw out one, and I think he's selling it short. I actually think Dinosaur Island is just a traditional nice Euro. In fact, I've been saying it's 4 Euros in one. I think that's what the appeal of Dinosaur Island is. He says, I don't play enough Euros. I would say Dinosaur Island, but it feels more like a hybrid.
Yeah, I have not had the joy of playing that one yet.
Oh, you haven't played Dinosaur Island yet?
Is that John Gilmore's game?
That's John Gilmore, and then the other designer is actually going to be on the show next month.
Oh, okay.
Brian Lewis, I think is his name. And he's going to be on the show next month talking about Dinosaur Island has a new expansion and a a 2-player version, Duelosaur Island. So he's going to be on the show to talk about it. I played it and I like it.
Yeah, it's a cool looking game, and I love I'm a big Jurassic Park fan from my childhood. So
the Kickstarter, it's got a slap band, an old 1990s slap band on it, and that's the first player marker, which is a little strange, but it's a nice touch. If you get a chance to try it, make sure you try it. Oh, Chris Strain says Dinosaur Island, and that's right, Chris Strain. Wasteland Express, another game with straight out Euro mechanics. But boy, it is just dripping with theme. Have you played Wasteland Express yet?
I am embarrassed to admit this. I actually have met Jonathan Gilmore, and he did Wasteland Express too, right?
No, that was Matt Riddle and Ben Pitchback.
Okay.
Unless John helped out on that one, but I'm not sure.
But no, I have not played that. But I was going to say I don't think I've ever played any of Jonathan's games actually.
Is that a winner?
No, never played Dead of Winter.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you've got some catching up to do.
I've sat through a game. I've watched other people play it, but I myself have never actually been a character. So I guess I've got like a partial play. But I met him last year and actually played Century Spice Road a couple times with him. And he was like, "Have you played any of my games?" And I'm like, "I'm really embarrassed to admit I don't think I have." I'm like, "Your games are very famous. I just have never. They've never come up with me." So,
quick question. Funny. Sean Jones corrected me. So John Gilmore did work on Wasteland Express. So get that checked out, man. Get that checked out.
Yeah, I know.
You've got a big shelf of shame if you own any of those games.
I don't. Yeah.
So hey, we were talking right before the show. Fun Again. The big news came out last week. Fun Again is gone let me be clear, from an online retailer. Their presence as a brick and mortar store is still around. And they're going to fulfill the last Kickstarters that they've done. But after this, no more online stuff. No more Kickstarter, no more their big online presence. And the reason I'm bringing it up with you, I think you would know, is because you're big on the STJ and big on Essen games. And Fun Again has been the mule for so many gamers on BGG that wanted to play the Essen games right away. Fun Again, for a little bit of a price, would bring back and mule those games for you. What are gamers going to do? What is their other outlet other than knowing a Chris Wray that's heading to Spiel in Germany? What's our other outlet for getting our hands on Essen games with Fun Again gone?
You're all welcome to come to Harrisonville, Missouri, sunny Harrisonville, and come join us for what we call it Essen West every year. It's the weekend after Essen. But okay, so I have to say a couple things about Fun Again, so if you don't mind me going on a small rant.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm passionate about two things in this hobby: the Spiel des Jahres Award, and I consider myself a game historian. And Fun Again has a historically significant place in the hobby because I believe it was actually a guy he imported. Speaking of games being brought over from Europe, he imported a whole bunch of copies of Catan when it first came out and was selling them out of the back of his car at the gathering of friends. And a lot of those games that were being sold, and a lot of Alan Moon's old White Wind games, a lot of those games became the first stock of Fun Again games. So it was one of the first sort of hobby game shops in the United States to carry these German-style games. I think the first was it's called North Shore Games up in Boston. But so this is a historically significant operation. So I was a little bit sad to see it close. And like you said, they are sort of the Essen Mule service. So where will people get their games now? Hopefully a few more of us Americans will go to Essen. And it's a cool trip. I'll give people a couple of tips because even with my 2 suitcases, I never fully get back all the games I want. So Philibert out of France it's an online French game store. It is €20 shipping for up to €50 in games, €30 shipping for up to €100 in games. That's kind of pricey, but for 2-day shipping from Europe, that's pretty good. And
maybe if you split the order with somebody else, you can get that cost down a little bit.
And so a lot of the Essen titles come out in Germany on the Thursday of Essen, or in France on the Thursday of Essen. So a lot of times, a lot of the more popular games aren't coming back in my suitcase. They're actually waiting for me on my doorstep when I get home. Ah. So, so and Philibert has a lot of Asian games too. So that's always a great source. Board Game Geek Marketplace, because there are, quite a few Americans who go buy a game, play it once or twice, and then sell it off. Then hopefully some publishers will start publishing things a little bit faster. I felt like I had said that 2016 was the year where Essen, the games all came out in America at the same time, and then 2017 happened, and like the games all came out months later this year. Right. So it always varies. So,
I mean, Altiplano, we're really still not seeing it much in the wild at all, and it's been months.
Yeah. So there are a few games that took months here, and like last year, the only one I think of note that took a really long time was Lorenzo Il Magnifico. And then I haven't really heard much about it since it got a U.S. release. So I really like it, though. It's a great game. But
it's a real big favorite in the Gumbo, and that game is played every single month. I mean, there's not a month that goes by. Oh, yeah.
Well, you just made my night because I'm glad because I really like that game, and I felt like it wasn't getting enough love. So
Bradley owns the game, and every month he breaks it out, and we play Lorenzo, and of course he stomps us. But man, it is such a good game. It really is a good game. I kind of assume that everybody knows about it because a lot of the podcasters have talked about it. But you're right, I don't see it very much outside of podcasting.
Yeah, and it doesn't get much, table time out here in Missouri. But when did it actually hit U.S. shores? Because I felt like it took a while. I mean,
well, I know somebody was talking about whether or not it could win awards this year, and it actually is a year older than people think.
Okay,
it came out a while back. I think it's actually a 2016 or 2017 release, so it's not.
Yeah, it's in 2016. So
yeah, it's not going to be up for the Golden. It wasn't eligible for the Golden Geek or any of those other awards because it's been out. What probably happened is it came out at one of those weird times in between, and so it's really it didn't hit American shores till 2017, but it's a game that's been out since 2016. But no, I think it's got an expansion, and we haven't tried it yet. That might get people excited about it.
Yeah, I saw the expansion at Essen. I haven't tried the expansion. I mean, I'm still sort of. First of all, I'm not really an expansion guy, but I've always been content with the base game. But yeah, that's one of those like gems that I wish more people knew about.
It's such a good game. It's such a good game. Steve's comment. You know how we have Gen Cant? Suzanne's little non-Gen Con convention. What about having a non-Essen convention and call it Lesson? Steve's bringing the heat tonight. All right, board gamers, that's it for another episode of Gumbo Live. I want to thank my guest, Chris Wray from the Opinionated Gamers. Man, you gave us a lot of great talk about Essen, about the Essen games, the Spiel games, and of course your thoughts on the SDJ. If people want to reach you, and in fact, if they want to try out your contest on the Spiel des Jahres, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So I have the same name as the FBI director, but I've got the email address until he takes it from me. So it's just ChristopherRay@gmail.com, WRAY though on the last name. And then Board Game Geek, I'm ChrisRay84. You can get a hold of me through the Opinionated Gamers website. The email will go to Dale Yu, our editor, but then it'll come to me afterwards. I don't really use Twitter. I work in government, so I communicate like it's 1955 and we use carrier pigeons. But
Twitter, it's all board games. You got to get on Twitter, man.
I'm a Twitter lurker, I guess is a good word. So that's how you can get a hold of me. But I'm always happy to check it.
What about that contest? Is that over on the BGG?
Oh yeah. So I always launch it in early April, but I've decided I'm going to start getting a regular schedule. So it's going to be the first Monday in April. At 9 a.m. I'll put it up, and then this year we'll have something awesome. I haven't decided on a prize yet, and then
how's the BlackBerry, Chris?
Yeah, they do give us an iPhone, but then we can't really use our email on it. So, BlackBerry. That's not something I thought about for 5 years.
So back to the Board Game Geek, they can find it on the BGG forums.
Yeah, and so and then I'll probably post a link to this show, in the comments to the show afterwards.
Oh, great.
So and it's simple. You just name 3 SDJ nominations and 3 Kennerspiel nominations. We didn't really talk about the Kennerspiel, but I'm on Team Heaven and Ale. I don't think it'll win actually because it's probably too heavy. But go Heaven and Ale. So
a sneak little pick there, Heaven and Ale. Hey, Marshall said I'm still waiting on my Altiplano pre-order. Miniature Market moved the release. It's been tough, man, to get Altiplano.
Yeah, I have to make one more come on Essen Games. Don't trust when they say they're going to be released here because I was really Heaven and Ale was one of my most anticipated games, but Cool Stuff said it would ship in October. So I pre-ordered it from Cool Stuff, and then did not bring back a copy of Heaven and Ale. It took till February to get my game. So
was it holding up the rest of your order?
It was, yeah. So it was worth the wait. Heaven and Ale is fantastic. So
I've got to try it. Oh, hey, can I ask one quick question? Are you familiar with Feudum? Have you played it? No,
I'm not. But the designer is from Columbia, Missouri, which is right next to Jeff City, Missouri, which is where I'm at right now. Wow. But yeah, so he's local, and I actually, went over and talked to him. Essen, there's a game group up in Columbia that I go to. But yeah, that one's it's coming out pretty soon, right?
It's in our hands. We'll hopefully be trying it next week.
Oh wow, that one's been coming for a while. So
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Well, make sure to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/BoardGameGumbo. It helps us to get the word out about all of our upcoming guests and shows. I am BJ from Board Game Gumbo. I want to thank my guest, Chris Wray from the Opinionated Gamers. And until next time, Chris, laissez le bon temps rouler.
Thank you very much.